Well, we got an article from Deadline. 24 Annapurna Interactive staffers resign as plans to spin off division fall apart. This is from Anthony D'Alessandro. 24 Annapurna Interactive staffers have left the company as plans for the Megan Ellison studio to spin off the division with the former department's president, Nathan Gary, fell apart. If the spinoff had gone through, Annapurna Interactive would have remained focused on indie games. The Annapurna Interactive division remains operational, we hear, with some staffers in place. There are plans to staff back up. Last week it was reported that Gary left the company along with heads of gaming, Deborah Mars and Nathan Vela. Hector Sanchez, who launched the division in 2016, departed and then returned prior to the trio's exits, but was named president of Interactive and New Media. Quote, Annapurna Interactive wouldn't exist without Megan's singular support of these stories, which weren't being told anywhere else in gaming, Sanchez said in a statement. She saw something almost a decade ago that no other backer we talked to did. Every conversation we've had with our development partners this week has reinforced the decision to come back and work alongside Megan to support our artists and our entire existing slate of games, end quote. Annapurna boss Megan Ellison said in a statement obtained by Deadline, quote, our top priority is continuing to support our developer and publishing partners during this transition. We're committed to not only our existing slate of games, but also expanding our presence in the interactive space as we continue to look for opportunities to take a more integrated approach to linear and interactive storytelling across film and TV, gaming, and theater. The library of Annapurna Interactive games include third-person cat adventure Stray, What Remains of Edith Finch, Outer Wilds, Silent Hill Townfall, and Neon White, among several others. Stray sold several millions of units in its first month of release, as well as nabbing gaming awards.
Okay.
Very weird story.
This was unexpected. Yeah. So, Annapurna, most of the staff resigned. All at the same time, immediately after a deal fell through to spin off Annapurna Interactive so that they can have independence from Annapurna as a whole, right? Annapurna Interactive, if you don't know, as we said at the end of that article there, is responsible for publishing a lot of really great indie titles. I would say they are like the second best or arguably the best indie publisher to date outside of a Devolver Digital. And so very, very, very important to the indie market Annapurna is. So this has left a lot of indie devs kind of hanging, going, hey man, we got a deal. What's going on with our publishing now? And so I imagine Annapurna is scrambling to find staff to continue that work and get those games out. I hope the best for them. You know, they didn't ask for any of this, so I hope the best for them and that their games still find success and make it onto all the platforms and all the marketing places that they're supposed to be. I'm sure this decision was not easy for the Annapurna Interactive staff. I'm sure it would have been easier to just kind of keep the day job and keep business as usual as a known brand. I'm fascinated to see what happens next. This, I imagine, is far from the first time we will hear this story. I imagine we're going to see a new publishing branch with all of these people turn up. Now, will they have the resources right away? I don't know. So, will they be able to publish the same? Will they be able to publish the games on the same sizes that we have seen before? Will we see them on the same showcases that we've seen them before? I don't know. But it'll be very interesting to whatever happens to this group next going forward. But I do imagine whatever does happen in the future, they will find success because they've already had a lot of success. And if I'm an indie developer and I know Megan and I know, what were the other people who were named in this? If I know Megan and I know Gary and I know Deborah Mars and all these people, Nathan Vela, Hector Sanchez, all of these people, I know these names, right? I'm going to go work with them again in the future, right? Because they did right by me in the publishing of XYZ games, so I'm going to go work with them again. But any games that have deals with Annapurna right now, of course, are going to have to fulfill those contracts. So we're going to see a slate of games still by Annapurna Interactive, but not necessarily the Annapurna that we know and are familiar with. I'm curious as to the effect of this on all sides.
Yeah, I remember it mentions at the end that Bloomberg initially reported on this story. I believe it was Jason Schreier.
Who broke it, I believe. That's the first story that I saw.
Yeah, and even he was like, I'll probably have more details a little bit down the line, a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
there's more to this story. I feel.
Yeah.
I like
What
some
happened?
weird. Yeah, because you would think that somebody would break at a certain point. If not the staffers, Annapurna themselves.
Yeah.
These are people that were able to help carry their games forward, and so it makes sense that they want to keep them the best they can. But they certainly didn't capitulate.
It's wild. It's
Yeah.
a wild story. Do me a favor, scoot to your right just a little bit. Perfect. It's doing a thing where I can't control your camera, and you're just at a weird angle, but that's fine. This is a very weird deal. The fact that it just failed to spin off is interesting. They didn't want, I guess Annapurna doesn't want its interactive branch to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they decided, well, fuck you, we're just going to go anyway. So it's just going to be so fascinating to see what happens next. Do they come back? Do they successfully spin off on their own? Do they create a new publishing branch in the space? That would be interesting. That would drive some competition. That would be really interesting. So you may see a wave of push of a bunch of really cool creative indie games that you would not have seen otherwise. So this could help strengthen the indie game market, or this could hurt it. We don't know yet, but I'm just so fascinated to see what comes next. So this is a side of the industry that you have to sit back, and it's not as sexy to talk about, as some of the other topics that we have coming up here on this show this week. But it's certainly one of the more fascinating ones. This is a story that the ramifications of this will be felt quickly. You will feel these ramifications within the next calendar year. And then on top of that, you potentially could see a drastically different side of the industry in 5 years,
And that's the thing. I think we're now officially entering into a new era, an uncertain one, because, obviously we've had the layoffs, and the current state of game development can't seem to sustain itself.
Yeah.
Even when you have games that are successful, we bring it up all the time, Hi-Fi Rush, think of another,
Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII, Dead Space Remake.
Mm. Point is,
I don't know which one you're fishing for, so
I can't remember either. But with so many people losing their jobs nowadays, and video game development getting longer, and that seemingly being the trajectory that people were going on, but now we have Astrobot came into play, and it's seeming to change things up. Knowing that you don't need to spend all of these, years and years and years making one game that has high fidelity when you could just make a less fidelity game and just plays extremely well and takes less to develop. You also have weird situations like this happening. Game developers had sounded the alarm that there were going to be more studio closures this year, which has happened so far. Obviously, people have always talked about a recession in the gaming market, which hasn't happened in quite some time. Something's going to give. And whereas at one point I would have kind of said, people are saying who know better than me that there's going to be a recession. Sure, there's going to be a recession soon. Now I don't know. This seems like a different span of events.
That's a more hopeful take than I
it's
have
more hopeful,
on this.
certainly.
I don't know about that. I think this is just going to sort of energize the indie market. On the grand scale AAA market, I think we're still going to fall victim to a lot of the things that we've already fallen victim to. I think Astrobot is a clear message to the business side of the AAA game market, especially with how Concord failed. But this, I think, is a smaller thing. The difference is that the times when you queue into a Summer Game Fest, to a Jeff Keighley stream, to an opening night live, those types of events, and you see indie game after indie game after indie game, you would be remiss, or sometimes Nintendo Direct goes on a weird tangent and shows you 3 farming simulator games, right?
Right.
But I think this is more of a we are going to establish more space for indie game development and more reasons to care about indie games. I think you're going to see more cases like Stray. I think you're going to see more cases like What Remains of Edith Finch and things like that. And there's just going to be more space for more devs at this point, because Annapurna Interactive still has its reputation. It just doesn't have the people that it used to.
Yeah, it's less this story I know is more just on its own going to be affecting the indie industry.
Yeah.
I'm more talking about this along with all of the other weird elements of things we haven't really seen quite before, all cohesively seen together as being indicative of some kind of weird, abnormal change. It's less this thing being the cause of it, or the main cause even, and just being a part of a whole.
Well, we are in a great we're in an era of great change throughout the industry. It's been mostly negative, but life has a way of kind of balancing itself out. At least that's as few times as I get optimistic, that's my optimistic point of view, is that things will balance out and you'll see the good come out of all of this bad eventually, right? I think, that's just kind of how humanity works. We're stuck up on this one thing for a long time and we all just kind of get tired and want to move on and not talk about these things anymore. Yeah, I think you see that in American politics as well. It feels like we're tired of talking about the same shit again and again. So it feels like we're about to enter a new wave of something else.
There's two ways to kind of think of that in terms of the broad term. I think of two different things. One is a quote from Martin Luther King, because it is a good quote. It's kind of a contested quote because you can debate how true it is, which is the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And then there's also the obviously things that meaning things will get better. Even if it takes a while, people identify what the issues are and there's a break at some point. There's that, and there's also what I've seen referred to as, and you know what word I'm saying, chaos theory. Of how literally how just things are things just happen in a vacuum. Sometimes they'll set a chain of events. Sometimes they won't. They'll just be this big event that's isolated, and things just happen from left to right, and this and that, good and bad. Depends on what kind of thought you have on how the world works. But it could go. Those are the ways it could go.
Yeah, I just think the change you're talking about is more grand scale, and I think the industry is not as big as that. So I think you will see a change happen in the next probably 5 years. You'll see a change, and this could be a catalyst of that. I think certainly on the indie side, how the indie game dev market operates could potentially change drastically from this in the next 3 to 5. I'm just curious as to how this affects people in the next 1 to 2 years, because it leaves a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of hanging.